Good luck for the rest of the day. Thank you all for turning up and showing up, not just today, but every day. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
So Claire Waxman and Sarah Champion have worked in this space since I've been in this space for 10, 15 years, give or take. But the lady that's coming up to share the podium with me has been in this space for a long, long time. And she's seen it go round and round and round and round again. So please can we give a big warm welcome to Fay Maxted, please.
Thanks, Chris. I feel about 10 years older.
So it looks like we're going to be sharing a mic here, but never mind. Yeah, that just connects you to that.
Oh,
it
right,
doesn't
okay.
speak to the room.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so we've heard this morning about the civic and the parliamentary and the national level kind of conversation that is going on. But Fay, as I've said, has been in this space for a very, very long time. She's the chief exec of the Survivors Trust, and I'm going to let Fay introduce herself comprehensively,
Okay.
because I don't want to muck it up for such a lovely lady.
Thanks, Chris. So, Chris says I'm Chief Exec of the Survivors Trust, and I've been with the Survivors Trust right from the start when we first met in about the year 2000 on the steering group, and then later joining them. My background is I used to manage a rape and sexual abuse support service in Rugby, and realised at that time, back in those days, that there was no national voice for survivors, particularly adult survivors and children, and that drove me to meet other people in the sector. And yeah, we came together. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but yeah, still here.
So I think we need to put the mic right up to our mouths, unfortunately. So we are exploring now the landscape of abuse. Who is a survivor? Who is a perpetrator? And where does abuse actually happen? So it happens in many different places and in many different forms. It happens within the family home, within relationships, within institutions, within communities, and increasingly in online spaces too. And you're going to hear about all of this as we go through this morning. Now, survivors come from every background and every community, every ethnicity and every profession, and so do perpetrators. Abuse does not belong to one social class, one postcode, one culture, or one type of environment, and that is one of the reasons it can remain so hidden. If you look at pages 5 and 6 in your book, and if you are watching this via the video online, you can access a PDF copy of this book. So if you look at pages 5 and 6 of the booklet, you'll see a graphic. It's called The Impact of Childhood Abuse, and it's a graphic that was created by ICSA, the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. It shows clearly that the impact of abuse, the trauma, does not stay in one part of life. It affects physical health, emotional well-being, behaviour, relationships, confidence and stability, and for some people, literally their lives. It can affect education, work, career progression, and day-to-day functioning. The impact can ripple and does ripple across the whole person, and it can build over time. This is why trauma-informed understanding matters so much, because otherwise people are judged by what they are struggling with, rather than understood in the context of what has happened to them. On page 7 and 8, we come to the SoB iceberg image. Now, the iceberg is not a new concept, but this is the image that I created. What is seen, disclosed and recorded is only the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to say that again. What is seen, disclosed, known about is the tip of the iceberg. So all of these figures that you've heard about is what's been disclosed. It's not what's underneath the water, the majority of the iceberg. So what remains hidden is not only the abuse itself, but also the long-term impact on health, well-being, relationships, employment, confidence, and whole life outcomes, including generational impact. And this is the part that really hits home, because so much of what gets counted in systems is based on what is disclosed, identified, and recorded. You've heard me say that 3 times now. Yeah, and there's a reason for this. But the sexual abuse and sexual violence sector, especially the specialist support sector, is often working not only those with whose abuse has already been identified, but also with those that are in the hidden part of that iceberg. Individuals that are not counted in official figures.
Thanks, Chris. So this really ties back into how Survivors Trust came into being. So back in 2000, Survivors Trust was set up by a small group of charity managers, survivors themselves, who recognised the need for a national voice for specialist sexual violence and abuse support services. We recognised that the iceberg was not being acknowledged, and we were seeing every day in our own services the impact that sexual abuse can have on someone when their needs just aren't met. Once we established ourselves as a charity, our membership rapidly grew from that small group of 6 to today we have over 125 members across the UK and Ireland. It was vitally important to us that our membership was inclusive, working with all victims, all survivors, regardless of age, gender or background. Our membership agencies signed a charter confirming this approach, and we're proud that our membership spans female-only, male-only and mixed services. Our membership continues to grow with a regular stream of new agencies seeking membership. We provide member forums and workshops, networking, information sharing and operational support. Many of our members aren't able to engage with consultations, so we support collective responses, for example, to the current Victims Code consultation. Increasingly, we provide support to chief execs who are struggling with keeping services running, keeping their doors open and meeting the demand that keeps increasing.
So many people accessing support are carrying the long-term impacts of abuse that were never properly named, never fully acknowledged, or only disclosed much later. For me, one of the overlooked parts of that hidden population is abuse within the family home environment. Intrafamilial abuse is what it's known as, or incestuous abuse, you might know it by that name, is not often just about one incident or one perpetrator. It can be more like a knot with different forms of harm, silence, fear, family loyalty, power and control, all tangled together over time. A child may be witnessing domestic violence, living with emotional abuse, being physically harmed, being sexually abused, being controlled, silenced or neglected, all within that same environment. Sometimes those patterns may also stretch across generations through what is seen, what is ignored, what is normalised, and what is repeated within that family system. A child may not understand that what is happening to them is abuse, because it's just their norm. They may not have the words for it, because they've not been taught that language. They may not be able to fight back. Who can fight back against an adult? Why should we be expected to fight back against adults? Often that comes with further consequence. They simply know that this is their reality and that they are living in it. And when a child or young person does speak up, it can begin to unravel that knot. Whatever the outcome, the family dynamic is never the same again. Children and young people often sense this long before they have the words for it. And that can be one of the many reasons they stay silent. Some are believed and protected by a non-offending parent or another safe adult, but many are not. Too often, adults protect the accused person, the family system, or the appearance of normality over the child. This adds another layer of harm because the child is not only living through abuse, but also through disbelief, minimisation or betrayal. And there is another layer. Some children who are neglected, traumatised or living with multiple adverse childhood experiences at home may later find themselves in care or in other settings outside of their normal family setting. But that does not automatically mean safety for many. Harm may continue or begin in new forms, and vulnerability itself can be targeted in the community or online, or both. We also need to name the fact that perpetrators are not always adults. Sometimes this includes sibling sexual abuse, which is more common than many of us want to even acknowledge, and it's not talked about enough. So in a family home environment, you could have multiple levels and layers of abuse happening. And I've never seen or heard any research on all of that, ever, in my time.
Thanks, Chris. So this impact on survivors and the trauma-informed approach needed is at the heart of what the sexual violence and abuse voluntary sector provides. So our members provide a wide range of support and therapy services, including play therapy, art groups, independent sexual violence advisor services, and sexual violence counselling. In all, our members are working with over 100,000 victims and survivors each year. And evaluation shows that our members provide cost-effective services that bring real improvements to survivors' lives in terms of feeling safe, increased well-being, and also reduced GP and hospital visits, monetary savings too. But currently there seems to be a never-ending stream of sexual violence and abuse-related issues in the media. Epstein, Mandelson, Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, and with each new media story, more survivors come forward seeking help and support, reminded by news stories of their own trauma and wanting respite from its effects. We also have the Grooming Gangs Inquiry, as it's called, just setting off, on 3 years of investigations, supported by Operation Beacon Port, which is reviewing cases of child sexual abuse and exploitation that were given no further action, either by police or CPS, and determining which of these should be reopened and investigated. I don't see the media stories decreasing anytime soon, and I'm starting to think of this as causing empathy fatigue. The subject is huge and difficult to take on board, and I think there are limits to how much the general public, unaware of the issues, is able to emotionally contain. There's sometimes too much for those of us working in the sector to contain. And there are huge changes in the pipeline that will affect how services are able to respond to survivors. The abolition of police and crime commissioners and NHS England will change commissioning. Maybe that will be for the better, but it's still bringing uncertainty. We have an ambitious violence against women and girls strategy and commitment to halve violence against women and girls in 10 years. However, disclosures of online sexual harm and child sexual abuse continue to increase, swamping both statutory and voluntary sector services alike.
And equally, VAWG will only cover what's recorded, doesn't cover what's hidden, hence why I keep going on about it. So these are the realities that many people in the sector will recognise, but wider society still does not fully understand them. And that has consequences for how survivors are seen, responded to and supported. If we are not naming abuse, we're not validating it. We are not acknowledging it, and we cannot offer the right response at the right time for that person. What is not named is not measured. What is not measured is not funded. And what is not funded is not prevented. You'll hear me say that time and time again. That is why pages 9 and 10 of your booklet matter, because they make the point that abuse does not end in childhood. The impact, as you heard Fay say, is lifelong for many. while support is still too often fragmented and focused on symptoms rather than the whole person and the causal reasons, which is often the abuse that they've suffered and they don't even know that may be causing their symptoms.
Thankfully, we have survivors like Chris who are able to speak out on behalf of others and drive forward meaningful engagement and involvement of survivors in policy developments. I first met Chris about 15 years ago and was struck then by her innovative approach to responding to survivors' needs. She recognised the need for a holistic, whole-body, whole-mind approach to managing trauma responses, and I hadn't seen that anywhere else. And we've campaigned together successfully, along with other survivors, for an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, ICSA. We then spent 8 years together on the Victims and Survivors Consultative Panel, which is a whole other story. And we continue to campaign with ACT on ICSA for the recommendations to be implemented. And Chris's social media skills and expertise were really valued at ICSA and continue to be inclusive and really effective. So with our ACT on ICSA campaign, we do count it as a success that the Child Protection Authority is in the pipeline. So is mandatory reporting, although we still have to see it put in place. But for me, these are good examples of why survivor voice is important and how it can and should influence policy and service developments. There is no better way of ensuring that policies and services actually address needs than hearing from the people directly affected by them.
So when we talk about a 10-year milestone event for us today, Survivors of Abuse, how long have you been going?
Since 2000, yeah.
A long, long time. We're not just marking time. What we're trying to do today is make the invisible visible. We're trying to show the hidden by naming the reality and just make sure that we're not forgetting the place where most abuse takes place, and that is within the family home environment. We're going to hear now from our survivor voices and later this morning because we want to bring the theory out into lived experience. We want to make sure that we're not just one of a 500,000 or 1 in 10. We are individual people with individual lives, with families, with careers or jobs in the community. And when we can heal, then everybody benefits. So thank you, Fay, for your inputs today. Much appreciated. Everyone. Thank you. You're right. So